The rich cultural history of Italian folk magic, known outside of the community of actual practitioners as stregoneria, has always been passed down generationally from elders to younger generations. But a growing number of us in the United States, especially interested in Italian witchcraft, fear that the tradition may have died or may die with our grandparents, our great grandparents, or aunts and uncles and great aunts and uncles. And as a result, we have a concern over pop culture books which might misrepresent, intentionally or unintentionally, the Italian American neo pagan religion, Stregoria, as being linked to the ancient practice of Italian witchcraft. And so that's what prompted me to do this series. And when we come back, we're going to dive into the basics of Stregoneria and the Italian folk magic tradition as it's practiced in Italy today and for thousands of years. Hey guys, it's Daddy Warlock, your host, John Michael Salvato, and this is Inner Alchemy After Dark. This is our series on Stregoneria, the Italian folk magic and witchcraft tradition. And if you're finding our program tonight interesting or helpful, and you want to know when we post new content, which is on, by the way, Wednesdays and Sundays, be sure to give us a thumbs up and like and click, and make sure you click that little bell symbol on YouTube to turn on notifications. Now, tonight, as I said, we're going to, and before we even get started, let me just say, I'm trying to make a mindful effort of looking at the camera. Rather than looking at the screen where all I really see is my mug. But I do have to look down at the screen on occasion to see if there are any comments coming in the comment feed. So let's go ahead and dive in. Tonight we're going to finally begin our classes on Italian witchcraft, or Stregoneria. Stregoneria is a folk magic tradition that draws on the magic of the Etruscan and African cultures, which make up our DNA as Southern Italians, Tuscans, and Siciliani. And so this is a tradition that is DNA driven, but I'm going to attempt to make this series useful to advanced practitioners of the craft as well as beginners who might just be stepping onto the path, to Italians and non-Italians alike. If you've got an interest in this sort of magic and it helps to enhance your type of practice of witchcraft, then we're grateful to do so. We're also grateful to offer this to those folks, as I said in the beginning, who may have been under the conception or the misconception that Stregoria is a path of witchcraft rather than a religion that's based around witchcraft. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So this might be useful for you if you want to, if you're feeling like you really want to dig deeper into the witchcraft side of your practice, and maybe feeling well about the religious side, or maybe religion doesn't resonate with you, then this might be something that's of value to you. Again, if you would just like and subscribe, thumbs up and subscribe, and be sure to click on the notifications. We'll keep you in touch through this entire class. If you have any questions as I'm sharing this information with you tonight, be sure to ask those questions. I will try to get to those either during the content itself, if it's in context, or at the end of our program. We're going to divide our class into three major parts: the basics, the elements, and the application, or spellcraft. And so tonight is going to be the basics. And it's taken me a lot of time to really kind of flesh out how I want to present this information. And one of the reasons that I had such a difficult time was that I had to do something that was never done as a child or teen growing up in the tradition, and that was I had to separate the old religion, both in its purest form, in the form that we call Benedicaria, from the practice of magic itself. you see, growing up, that would be blended. The difference between the old religion and the practice of the craft itself, the teaching was going on simultaneously. And so there were times when you would use the stories of the old religion to teach a concept of the craft itself. Now, the old religion, when I say that, I'm talking about the religion which honors Tana and Tanus, the primordial forms of Hecate and Lucifer or Hades, as well as the syncretized religion, like I said, that we call that Benedicaria, which was the foundation of the 20th century Wiccan practitioners, the late and great Raven Grimassi, Christian Day, Laurie Bruno, and many others, who developed their popular Stregoria religion around this old religion. And Stregoria is an imaginative, beautiful, and highly expressive neo-pagan religion that's based on misinterpretations of the folklorist Charles Leland's observations in Tuscany. That took place around the turn of the 20th century, and was intended to be kept secret, this old religion, as all mystery school traditions are. So let's first talk about the difference between witchcraft and the religions that use witchcraft as an inspiration for their sacred legends, because I really think that's something that's important to understand right off the bat. Need a little kombucha for this one. Now, Stregoria, for example, was an innovation of the 20th century period. It didn't exist in ancient times in any form, and I've referred to it in the past as Wicca with Italian herbs and spices because I'm a smartass. But I really meant that respectfully because, as I said, I think it's a beautiful religion. For those who feel a need for religion, it's as good as any, and probably better than most. Now, when we talk about this, we talk about the old religion and we talk about Stregoria. It's a religion that tells the story of the Dark Mother or the primordial mother, primordial female archetype, and her consort, and the magical child that they gave birth to. Now, that child we know as Aradia, the queen of the witches. And it's a common motif. The story isn't something that's in any way new or fresh. It's quite ancient, and we find it repeated in cultures around the world. Now, there are no rituals, implements, or practices in Stregoria that are really connected to actual Italian witchcraft. Instead, these implements and these tools are deeply connected to the same legends and same traditions that Wicca and British tradcraft would draw upon. So we call these traditions of that religion mystery school traditions, and there are many, that resemble Wicca and tradcraft, and there are many that don't. By definition, a mystery school is a group of students or initiates who have dedicated themselves to preserving and protecting and perpetuating the mystery teachings of the ancient world. So depending on the mythos, depending on the legend itself, we'll hear different sources of those supposed mysteries. But throughout the ages, the mystery schools have hidden in plain sight, sometimes with good reason, other times just in case. Some of the world's most magnificent temples and buildings were dedicated to the preservation and teachings of these mysteries, including the Great Library at Alexandria, which was burned to the ground by the corrupt Roman Catholic Church and Roman Empire, which didn't want these profound mysteries to fall into the hands of the laity. So they, rather than allow that to happen, they burned it to the ground so that their religion, their presentation of the mystery school teachings, would be the predominant one. Now, the ancient wisdom of the mystery schools has been taught both publicly and behind closed doors for those who have eyes to see, as the tradition says, and those who have ears to hear. Sound familiar? These are common themes of all of the mystery schools. Even in the modern tradition of the Roman Catholic Mass and the Eastern Catholic Mass, the Orthodox Mass, we have visual representation of some of the practices of the mystery school tradition. The entire concept of mystagogy and the tradition of the catechumens being released after the hearing the word and being released before the sacrament is actually confected. That all comes from the mystery school tradition. Now, the initiates are those who have been known throughout time and in different traditions as guardians or protectors. Some traditions call them the light bearers, some call them the teachers, the healers, the record keepers, and the watchers. And when we talk about these initiates, we're talking about those who preserve the ancient religion. It has nothing to do with the craft itself. So as such, Stregheria is a mystery school tradition, a beautiful mystery school tradition in the 20th and 21st century. And its rituals, its rhythms, and its secrets are all part of the ancient lineage, repackaged with elements of the Mediterranean culture and legends that that are geared toward the people that it's intended to appeal to. So let's be perfectly clear. Whenever I speak about Stregheria in that way, I'm not being disrespectful. I have, as much respect for that as a religion as I do for any other. And I'm also not disrespecting in any way, shape, or form the late Raven Grimassi or the wonderful Laurie Bruno or Christian Day or anyone else, any of those people who've been connected with or had drama between themselves and Stregheria in any way, shape, or form. That's their drama, their baggage, their business, not mine. Religion simply doesn't resonate with me. So when I talk about religion and there may seem to be a bit of disdain in my voice, it's because I have disdain for religion, period. It's nice to know the sacred legends. It's nice to and very useful to know about the various entities that the primitive-minded people, the unsophisticated people living in the 4th and 5th centuries before the Common Era, imagined to be gods or goddesses, because they didn't understand how to interact with beings that might be from a different spiritual plane or might be different in form from themselves. But understanding that it's just not something that has a place in my practice or path. It's just good information. Witchcraft, as I said, was never intended to be a religion, especially in Italy. It is, in fact, the opposite of religion. Religion focuses on connecting us with external supernatural forces that somehow have control and power over us, and it's the realm of superstition, not self-mastery. And make no mistake about it, the business of keeping people, including those who are drawn to witchcraft, disempowered by building legends and myths around imaginary powers that these gods and goddesses and demons and principalities and powers have, is big business. And it's not just big business in organized religion, it's big business in non-organized religion, including some of the witchcraft religions. Publishing agents and blogging aggregators, churches, and so forth. They're all established around the idea of keeping the consumers happy, keeping people wanting more, and never giving them everything. And sadly, it's trapped some otherwise gifted witches in the 20th and 21st century into a system of manipulation and beholden relationships that I find sad. But at some point, I think we all, especially the most sincere practitioners at least, have to say fuck it. And at that point, we could do one of two things as I see it. We can start our own tradition, as many have done, to try to bring people to a place of not only greater awareness and responsibility, but a place of greater power. And there have been people in the 21st century who've done that and done that incredibly well with doing such a great service, I think, to the community of practitioners of the craft. People like Devin Hunter, Chaz Bogan, Storm Fairy-Wolf, and many others who've created their own traditions and take them to the community of practitioners so that folks can find their own power and reclaim their own power. Or people can do, when they say fuck it, they can take the other path and that's the path that I'm taking, and decide that we're going to focus on what witchcraft was before it became corrupted by those who turned it into a religion in the 19th and 20th centuries. So, what is it that I'm going to teach you? Let's dig in. In the simplest of terms, I'm going to teach you how to use the elements of nature, scientific principles, and mental alchemy to create changes in yourself, in others, and in your environment. See, that's what I believe the craft is all about. That's how I learned what witchcraft was. It's the ability to work with the energy around people and place. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the screen, and I remember I'm supposed to be looking up here. It's you know, the ability to work with the energy around people and circumstances and situations and places, and manipulate that energy so that the experience of this life that we have is better, that it bends toward our desire. Now, these traditions are the traditions of the shamans of Etruria, from whom from where the Etruscans come, as well as the shamans and the priests of Africa and Egypt. So you don't have to believe in any gods or goddesses, nor do you have to worship anything or anyone to use this magic. Some have called this tradition Italian root work. Others call it witchcraft or l'astuzia, the cunning folk. And that's what I'm going to teach you. This is a secular tradition. This is a science for the people, for my people. So let's talk a little bit about how it began. L'astuzia, or the Streghe, lived in and among the villages and the tribes of their kinfolk in ancient Etruria and Sicilia. They were the wise ones who people turned to, who created a profitable and a respectable business, in many cases, by helping people with whatever it was that afflicted them. Helping them with health issues or relationship issues, job issues. The Streghe themselves were the ones that people turned to. Now, in some areas, the Streghe would live just outside of the town, so that what they were doing and what the herbs they were growing and their practice could be undisturbed or undistracted. In cases, as human history has shown us, that people dance to the beat of a different drum. At times people start to malign those folks and say they're evil or they're wicked or they're doing something mysterious. Well, the Streghe themselves, the Stuzia themselves, served a very practical purpose in the ancient world. So especially in Italy and Sicilia, in the Middle Ages, we think about the fact that the Black Plague, affected so many people, and many of the country folks, the Paganus, as the ancients would call them, lacked the kind of wealth and the kind of resources that would have made it possible for them to seek skilled medical professionals. And when we think about the Great Plague, 75 to I think 200-ish million people in Eurasia perished under the Great Plague. And these gifted natural healers could provide combinations of herbs and natural roots and potions that would make it possible for the medical professionals, the medical examiners, the police, the officials, to move these bodies of the dead without exposing themselves to the plague. And this appeared to be a supernatural accomplishment, but in the 21st century, we recognize that this combination of natural ingredients, which has come to be known as thieves' oil or thieves' vinegar, had scientific significance as well. There was a reason scientifically, but how did these people know that when the science of the day wasn't that advanced? And so as the Italian immigrants migrated to the United States, many of these old world cures and traditions made it possible for the Italians, who were often at that time discriminated against and pushed to live in ghettos, to keep their children and other loved ones healthy in the face of dysentery and tuberculosis, typhus, and things like that. It was also a way of supporting their family, because while somebody might hold the Italian Streghe with disdain publicly, when something went wrong, they were the first people that you quietly went to in the middle of the night. And so that's why a lot of us would end up in traditions or in occupations rather, that allowed our traditions to happen under the surface. Just as we see in New Orleans in the voodoo community with Marie Laveau having a hair salon, a lot of this today are hairdressers. And they would do that because that allowed their clientele to come and seek their help, to come and seek their guidance, without being noticed by the rest of their echelon. So we shared a common ground with another group of people, as I started to say, which who a group of people that arrived in America forcibly many years earlier, and that's the African American slaves. And so, what might be found in certain regions, especially up in the northeastern Appalachians, can be observed as very similar in tradition and praxis to Stregoneria, because they are folk magic practitioners, especially the ones that call themselves the cunning folk that live up here in the Appalachians. I've spent a lot of time with these folks, and it's just incredible to me to find people outside of the Italian heritage who were doing a lot of the same things that we did, and there was no connection between their culture and ours. So it lets me know that this wisdom runs deep and comes from someplace that's a little more powerful than what our minds can wrap around. So there's 5 principal reasons that I want to start off our class with, to let you know, kind of from my perspective, why we want to keep this tradition alive today, and why I'm really kind of trying to make this a postmodern practice of witchcraft for folks, kind of taking the superstitious element and the religious element and everything else that's gotten added in the 20th century together and kind of mushed together into into traditions like Stregoneria and Wicca and things like that. I want to, for not just because I'm probably a purist, and I'll own that, but also because I think that when we distill something down to its truest essence, we're able to be more effective at using it. So the first reason that I'm doing this is to honor the ancient wisdom of my ancestors and my cultural heritage as Italians and Siciliani and Afro-Italiani. I think it's important to honor the source of that ancient wisdom, to honor the ancestors themselves who passed it down. The second reason would be because I feel like it's an important time for us to return to our roots as protectors and lovers of the natural world, honoring Earth as our mother and showing respect for nature at a time when our planet needs healing most of all. So that's the second reason. The third for me is for personal empowerment and growth. Because if I can teach somebody how to use this tradition to create a better life for themselves, then that empowered presence in the world changes everything. And so I want to do my part to make sure that happens, as small as that part might be. The fourth reason that I want to do this is to experience the benefits of living in a world where we're mindful of our ability and responsibility to affect the energy around circumstances and people and conditions in a way that creates a better world, not just for us, but for future generations, rather than being a world where we're so fearful and so steeped in the superstition of the Abrahamic religious traditions that we're drawing lines in the sand and playing us versus them and acting in a way that is victim oriented rather than empowered and recognizing the fullness. There's every show gotta have a cop outside. So, and the fifth reason is to fulfill our purposes, what I think to be our prime directive, if you will, to become masters of our craft. So those are the reasons that I'm doing this. Now, how does it work, and what is it that we're going to start really digging into? Like I said, this is the basics, and so understand that we're kind of taking a lifetime, like my entire childhood up to adulthood, and compressing it into this one video so that we can begin to dig even deeper in our next installment. So, in an Italian family, these six foundational principles or concepts would have been taught through stories and examples, from that start off very simple and very childlike, and gradually mature into deeper, more complex stories, as well as the relationship that we had, between myself and my grandmother, myself and my aunts, over the years. So we're looking at a period of time from like age 6 until 13 when these stories are told. But there are six principal concepts, six kind of elements of the foundation of our tradition. The first is that we are Aradia. Now, the story of Aradia, the queen of the witches and the first among witches, is a story of personal primacy, of power, sovereignty, if you will. And we believe that there is a primal creative power or an energy behind, within, around, and through the cosmos. The ancients, with their primitive abilities to reason, anthropomorphized or turned this concept into their gods and their goddesses. And they conveyed this concept via those sacred stories that we now know today as the story of Diana and Dianos and Aradia. But even in the present day, we have people who prefer to imagine this power of the cosmos as a personal god or goddess. And that's okay. The more rational and scientifically minded among us may choose not to do that. We might recognize that this energy is the same as what Einstein would call zero-point energy, the vast reservoir of unquantifiable energy that exists below the subatomic level from which all matter is manifest. Or as Dr. Ernest Holmes would call it, the universal mind, or A Course in Miracle might call it love, as did Rabbi Jesus and Rumi. But regardless of what you call this primal power, this creative energy, it's your personal indwelling and inseparable power. And that's the foundation, the number one concept upon which our craft is built. Embracing this power not only doesn't conflict with religion or no religion, it's essentially the truth about our own nature. It's not about an external force. You're free to practice any religion or no religion alongside of your craft, so long as you remain rooted in your own sovereignty and don't let that creative authorship get taken away. The second concept is that the earth and the cosmos are sacred. The cosmos is a living, breathing entity, and the earth is one of the cosmos' children. Therefore, it is as much a living, breathing entity as the cosmos herself. And so for this reason, we don't just take what we want from the earth. We cultivate a relationship with all of nature, the spirits of nature, the essence of nature, if you wish. We appreciate these forces, these spirits, these entities or energies that are beyond our comprehension, and we bring gratitude and humility to our practice. And that's an important part. And the second thing that a child would learn to cultivate as they played in the garden or helped to grow or harvest tomatoes or basilico or rue or whatever it was. The third concept is that physical death is not final. Energy can neither be created or destroyed. We know that from physics. And so there are planes and forms of existence that exist beyond our comprehension and awareness. And we know that when this body dies, the energy that is us, the energy that is the personality, the energy that is the source of that power expressing itself in the world, goes on. And so because of this, we know that the fourth concept, through the gift of divination, we can see many outcomes of our futures, depending on the energies that are existing right now, that are going on right now. Sherry, it's nice to see you. Um, this isn't a science of doom or gloom. When I say that the fourth concept is the gift of divination, it's not fortune telling like you see in the movies, or card reading in a way that says this is what's going to happen, period. It's a gift of insight that we bring that comes from our connection to the spiritual realm, that allows us to connect with what might be out of balance and point out that if the energy continues in this direction, if we continue to bring what we're bringing to the table, this is likely to be the outcome. And then we have the option, we have the sovereignty, the authorship to say we want to change that. Now, the fifth concept that a child would learn as they start to become more mature, when they're in their tween years, would be the law of cause and effect, and understanding that the law of cause and effect, or karma as people call it in pop culture, is universal. But each one of us has that sovereignty that I talked about in the beginning. And so we interpret that law of cause and effect a little differently, so that when someone does something to us, we have the right and we have the responsibility to defend ourselves, to whether to defend ourselves passively or to banefully respond when harm has been inflicted upon us or a loved one. And that, like I said, that's we're taught that is our right and our responsibility. And the final thing, probably the most beautiful of these things, is understanding that we conduct our way, as it's called. I'm kind of taking back the word stregoneria from its pejorative sense, and so I'm proudly saying that what I practice as a witch is stregoneria, because stregoneria wouldn't be used by our people, and our practitioners themselves in Italy. It was used by outsiders who looked down their nose at us, and quite often were the ones that would sit in the chair of the strega in the beauty shop or in the bakery, and in hushed tones ask for their help. But the sixth concept is that in all things, fairness, justice, compassion, and integrity. We don't pretend to live by the Wiccan Rede, or anything else that was any superstitious notions like the rule of three that were created in the 20th century. We are sovereign witches, practitioners, who conduct ourselves according to our conscience and according to our desire to act in a way that is fair and just and compassionate and honorable. Our God is love, our religion's compassion, our path is service, and our way is justice and creativity. So those are the basics. That is what you would have learned. And I encourage you, if you're watching this live, I encourage you to watch it again, so that you really get a kind of a sense, and ask the ancestors to kind of sit with you through this, so that you begin to understand, hello Lady Fate, so that you begin to understand a little more clearly what's going on, as you're hearing these things as an adult, for most of you, and imagine kind of how that would be represented in your family, and maybe for some of you was represented in your family. And as you start to see these six concepts, you say, oh, that's what grandma was talking about, that's what grandpa was talking about, or oh, that's why Uncle so and so used to always tell that story, or Aunt Mary always would talk about these aspects of living a good life. And so you begin to see that there may have been more streghe in your family, your immediate family or your extended family, but certainly within your ancestry. And I believe that when people are attracted to something, when they're called really deeply to something for the right reasons, it's because there is some connection in their history as beings energetically. Maybe not in this lifetime, I don't know. But so I hope that this provides you guys with, Ed, nice to see you. I hope this provides you guys with a sense of where we're going, and with a good foundation, because these concepts we talked about tonight are very, very critical to understanding next week when we go into the elements of witchcraft, of Italian witchcraft, stregoneria, of our practice. And so I encourage you to watch this more than once. If you're just tuning in right now, then I encourage you to rewind the broadcast after it's done playing, because usually when it's a Facebook Live or YouTube Live rather, the quality, if you rewind in the moment, isn't as good as if you give it 20 minutes after we're done. We try to keep these classes to 30 minutes. I apologize that I kept you over tonight, but it was really important that we talk about those concepts and that we clarify where we're coming from, because I want my presentation of these principles and of these traditions to come from a place of respect. I have great respect for Stregoria. I have a number of very close friends who are Strega, who practice the religion of Stregoria, and I just want people to understand this is not about a religion. My practice has nothing to do with Stregoria, although I grew up with both the old religion, which in the 20th century has been repackaged as Stregoria, but also with Italian witchcraft itself. And that Italian witchcraft itself is what resonates with me. So for some folks, both are going to resonate with you. That's fantastic. For others, just the religion will resonate with you. And that too is great. But for me, it was just the practice of the craft itself. And my addiction to kombucha. So be sure to like and subscribe. Share this with somebody you know who think might benefit. As I said, next week, we're going to talk about the elements of the craft. So that's definitely going to be something that will get a little bit meatier and might go, I'm going to tell you right up front, next week might go a full 45 minutes. So if you can gauge your time around that, I'm going to try and do these at the same time on Sunday nights. Don't forget to, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to bring you another installment of our weekly talk show, The Brew, where your favorite queer witch and warlock talks pagan spirituality, culture, health, and news with special guests from throughout our traditions. And for readings and spell work or counseling classes and what have you, you can visit me on the web at www.inneralchemy.online. I was supposed to put, I just can't do all this myself. I was supposed to put that up. I was told by our producers that it would look a lot better if I had this up the entire time. But there's my contact information, www.inneralchemy.online. You could say hi to me on Twitter at Gay Chaos Witch over on Twitter, or on Facebook, and of course here on YouTube. So until next time we get to share some time together next Sunday, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending time with us tonight. I want to encourage you, as we do every week, to bring your awareness and your energy and your attention to the present moment, because that's where the power is. That's where these things that we're teaching you are going to begin to make the most sense. To fill that present moment with gratitude, because if you can't be grateful for what you've got, there is absolutely no reason to think you're going to be any happier with more. And to always remember, my friends, the best is yet to come. We'll talk to you soon. Alchemy.